Say you live in a mansion, and your mansion is surrounded by shacks, and you have a magic wand. With this magic wand, you can be able to make everyone else also live in a mansion. Would you use it? Or rather, how would you use it? Outside of tribalism and dehumanization, your answer would largely be based off what researchers called social value orientation. Social value orientation is really a fancy term for what do you care about? What matters to you? Now, there's 3 different categories of people, and I'll explore these categories with you. Category number 1 is the pro-social person. These people will be excited, they'll say, yay. They're the people with this egalitarian perspective on life who do want good things for themselves, but not at the expense of others. They want good things for themselves, but they always put the community first. So these are people who will say yes and use the magic wand to build everyone a mansion. And then there's individualists. Individualists are people who want to gain something out of it. So for example, if building everyone else or using this magic wand to get everyone else a mansion means that the property taxes are going to go up. And if the property taxes go up, there will be better schools. And if there's better schools, their kids get to go to a better school. Then they'll definitely say yes. So for them, it doesn't matter who benefits or who doesn't, so long as they gain something from it, so long as they get a bargain from it. These are the type of people who walk into Walmart looking for a deal, right? And then there are competitors. This is a very fascinating group. In this group, these people aren't interested in making a benefit or ensuring that there's a benefit for others. But in fact, they're also uninterested in just gaining. These are the people who will be asking themselves, what's the point of having a mansion when there are no have-nots? What's the point of living in a mansion by the beach when there are no poor people to look at you, right? So these people would actually take a pay cut just so that they can expand the gap between them and the person who's poor or who's less than. To them, it's all about beating the next person. It's all about the difference that they have with the next person. And this is very similar to how we then tackle and understand race. And I think the challenge within race and anti-racism, or why should I care, is the fact that most privileged people care more about comfort than they do about equity, equality, and justice. Now, as you know, at the Anti-Racist Hot Dog, we can't just go deep into why should I care about racism before we get a little bit of some anti-racist hot dog food. Welcome to the Anti-Racist Hot Dog. I am your host, Wandile Mthiyane, and I'm excited about this next segment. We're going to go see our chef, Chef Pali, who's going to introduce us to a new culture within the continent of Africa and to a new African cuisines. This is the only cooking show that serves you with African cuisines with a side of anti-racism. Chef Pali, everyone. Thank you for coming to the show again.
It's good to be back here.
Yeah, I'm excited. What are we learning about today? Which culture are we exploring?
Okay, so today we're going to be making samp.
Okay, samp.
Once again, another very basic but delicious, basic cheap meal, right?
In South Africa.
In South Africa.
Yes.
But obviously, I'm sort of taking it a notch higher.
Hey,
okay, just a notch higher.
Yeah.
Make it. Oh, and this one's vegetarian. No meat today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
So this is basically samp and beans,
Okay,
right?
samp and beans.
These are kidney beans.
Kidney beans, okay.
These are kidney beans. And then this here is dried corn kernels.
Oh, dried corn kernels.
Yeah, so they go through a process called stamping. So I'm not sure if the name comes from like stamping, I'm not sure. But the corniness in me would love to believe that. So this is basically samp. These are usually soaked overnight. Now we've got a bit more processing, so you don't have to soak them overnight.
Okay.
And you basically cook them over the stove for about 2 hours on a low heat. And usually this is eaten sort of like a starch option.
Gotcha.
So you can have it with your meat or some veggies, you know. But you can also have it just alone, which is delicious. And we're going to make it alone, but with a whole lot of deliciousness in it.
I could be wrong, but do they not call kidney beans sugar beans in South Africa?
Yes, sugar beans. Yes, it's actually sugar beans. And yeah, so sugar beans also take long. You also soak them as well overnight.
You see, that's a deep chef cut. I know stuff.
Yeah, no, that cut me real deep.
So what do we do first?
So we have already been soaking them overnight.
Yes.
They're here in this pot just cooking nice and slow.
Okay, perfect.
Now we're going to make the accompaniment. So what we're going to actually add to it.
Okay, the
Right,
flavor.
the flavor.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A little
So
bit of
we're going to
oil.
start with oil.
Olive oil, right?
Olive oil, yes. Hot pan, nice and sizzling.
Yes.
Put in our onions. You
Onions.
can just chuck them in there.
Ooh. I love this.
Okay.
When do you do this?
Not now.
Not now,
And not
okay.
you.
What else do we put?
Okay.
Spices?
Now we
Curry
fry
powder?
off our spices. So the spices that we have here is a barbecue spice and
Okay.
mixed herb spice.
Okay.
Okay. Then while you stir there, I'll just add the green peppers.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you add the green peppers and prepare this amazing meal, I'm going to run and talk about racism.
You always leave me and come back to eat.
It's for the cause. But I'm excited to come back and taste this meal that I can finally taste.
Yes. All right.
Awesome. I'll see you in a few.
Sure, Wandile.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Anti-Racist Hot Dog Show, the only show that serves African cuisines with a side of anti-racism. Today, we're tackling a topic that I'm very excited about, and this is the idea of why should I care? Some of you are sitting there because your company made you watch this. I'm sorry. But today, we're going to tackle why you're here. And to do that, we're joined by our senior Why Should I Care correspondent, Sbusiso Timkhulu. Sbusism Timkhulu, everybody. Sbu, it's such a pleasure to have you, man. Why should I care? So Sbu, it's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for your time. Now, since the brutal murder of George Floyd in 2020, there's been a lot of changes that we've seen. A lot of promises from companies and from organizations. The NFL reversed their ban on the protest, right? Eins Jumama changed their branding. The Washington Redskins changed their problematic name to Washington Commanders. Now, the big question is this a movement or is this just another moment?
Skeptics may argue the latter because we have seen this before.
Yeah.
Like in the 60s, Martin Luther King, if you remember correctly. We have
Rodney King. Breonna Taylor recently.
George Floyd.
Yeah, all people killed by the police. Yeah.
And although we have seen these images of change, we've also saw how quickly they can, cool
Die
down,
out.
die out,
Yeah.
and go back to injustice. Business as usual.
So skeptics do have a point that we've seen these things happen before, and there's hype at the beginning, and everyone is talking about change.
Exactly.
But it goes back to business as usual, which that business as usual means inequality, means racism, means police brutality. So some scholars suggest this is a predictable pattern, the result of appeasement rather than actual action. In fact, they go on to even say that certain initiatives during these heightened events are actually funded by racists because they want to quickly restore peace to preserve power. The goal is to make the plantation peaceful as they continue to exploit it.
The biggest problem is about perception, how people think they're anti-racist versus how anti-racist they actually are. The study, if you remember correctly, of the study of Kerry Kawakami, when she put in place a black actor and a white actor. And these were conditions in 3 segments. Non-comment, mildly racist comment, and extremely racist comment.
Yeah.
And when she put these 2 different skinned student participants
Yeah.
she bring in non-black participants
Yeah.
in a classroom of a study, of course.
Yeah.
So when this happened, the black student
Yeah.
wanted to excuse himself.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, when you're excusing yourself and you bump into certain individuals for you to get your way out.
Yeah.
After that happened, the white actor actually commented on, you look at that N. He's such a clumsy
N-word.
N-word.
Yeah.
You know, and they even made the other participants read what happened in the incident, and the student that read it actually were appalled by this, obviously, and then they chose the black to work with the black participants rather than the white. But however, the people that were in the incident actually chose the white racist student.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
So you can actually see that people were not even faced by that, but took a decision of actually carrying on, maybe associating themselves with that student, because,
So wait, what you're telling me is that when folks saw black people being discriminated against, that wasn't upsetting enough
exactly,
for them to not choose them
of
as
course,
class partners.
as a class partner.
So in other words, black paint doesn't have that much value.
Wandile, the implications of organizations for companies that actually think they are in the verge or in the pipeline of being anti-racist are actually the opposite of it.
Why so?
Because they have this policy that says we are anti-racist.
Okay.
How could have this happened to you? Because in this we follow such and such a protocol, which is vague, because right now they put themselves in the image of that, but protect themselves when something of racist happens. You know.
So it's virtue signaling, in other words.
Exactly.
That just because you have a policy, you now think that you're anti-racist.
Exactly.
But that's not how it actually works.
Exactly.
You actually have to do the work in changing and transforming company culture.
Yeah.
In fact, the companies that have these anti-racist policies end up weaponizing them discriminated against black people who come and bring in complaints. Like, no, this could have not happened here. It's similar to the people who voted for Obama. It's like, oh, I voted for Obama. I don't have a racist bone in my body.
In my body.
So in other words, just because you voted for Obama, you are now justified.
Exactly.
It's like a racism hall pass. You can call a black person an N-word. You can do whatever. So in fact, the folks that claim to be egalitarian and have all these policies and stuff don't actually practice what they preach, but they use these policies as a certificate to say that I'm anti-racist, and it's like a lifetime membership. They can do anything, and they're excused of it. Very fascinating.
Okay, Wandile, let me ask you a question. Why do people don't care? Why do they have that?
I think that's simple. I think it's three things.
Okay.
Tribalism,
Okay.
self-interest,
Okay.
human values in terms of what they care about.
Okay.
Take tribalism, for example.
Yeah.
Right? It's the idea of protecting the in-group. So if I point out that Smoo is racist, it reflects bad on me. So it's better for me to ignore your racism so that we all look good.
And if I may to add, this thing is a double whammy if you look at it in spectrum.
Yeah.
Because people have this perception of, not even perception, people are treated with discrimination and they face that. And adding on the white people who are seeing this person getting discriminated, which makes them have the perception of them, if he can get discriminated, maybe he's not worth of value. He doesn't have anything. So there's the status after the discrimination that you have.
Sort of like that experiment you talked about in your class. That's like, well, if a black person is being discriminated against, they must be worth nothing. They must be worth being discriminated against.
Course.
So I won't associate with them. What actually proves this is a study about these Italian kids, where they found that Italian kids were more likely to play, white kids were more likely to play with other white kids who exclusively played with white kids only versus the white kids who played with a diverse group of people.
it all boils down to what people value. With what people value is what we prioritize.
That's a really important point, because when you look at the case of Colin Kaepernick, for example, right? So he's a professional athlete. We know how hard it is to be an NFL player.
Yeah.
So clearly he values sports.
Yeah.
Clearly he values the money because he's making big bang.
Exactly.
But he values his race and being black more than he values his career. And that's why he was willing to take the knee and sacrifice both his career and the money just for the sake of his identity. Right? Now, had Colin Kaepernick been in a different situation, let's say maybe he's got 3 kids, a big family that he has to feed and take care of, maybe he would have made different decisions. This goes to show that our values can shift and change based on our circumstances and our positioning in life. On the other hand, you do have, people like OGs like Nelson Mandela, folks who prioritize the country at the expense of his own family.
Exactly. And the problem with race, Wandile, is that privileged people prioritize comfort more than they could
Than equality
and justice.
And justice. So Wandile, this session is teaching me that why people actually don't care about anti-racism. And it really boils down to 3 things. Tribalism, maybe they don't see a personal value or gain for them, and it goes to what they prioritize and value, right? Now the bigger question is, how do we make them care? And there are 3 things in my mind, and we're going to look at this in our next episode. And that is incentives, disincentives, and the moral appeal. So the 3 things I learned from our conversation today, Sbu, is number 1, this idea that in light of 2020 Black Lives Matter and the brutal murder of George Floyd, we saw a lot of companies coming out and following a very common pattern of appeasement rather than effecting change, writing statements and actually not doing anything about it.
Exactly.
But number 2, we see that there's a huge discrepancy between how people think they're anti-racist versus how anti-racist they actually are. And this goes on to then create an environment where black and brown folks aren't only affected by the folks who oppose racism, but also by the folks who think they're anti-racist. Last but not least, we realize that there are 3 things that make people not care about anti-racism or inclusion. And number 1, it's just not a priority in their lives. Number 2, it's this idea of tribalism, protecting the in-group. So they'll rather ignore anything false or anything negative done by the in-group. And number 3, last but not least, people just don't see any personal gain from their being anti-racist or protesting or hiring diverse. Those are the 3 main things that affect why people don't really care about anti-racism. Thank you very much, Sbu. It's always a pleasure to have you, my brother.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sbu Team Cool. It's always exciting to have this conversation with you all. Always a lot to think about afterwards. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap for today. This is the Anti-Racist Hot Dog Show. I am your host, Wandile Mthiyane. But now we're going to move to our most exciting segment of the show, and that is eating. We're going to check in with our chef, Chef Pali. Let's go eat some anti-racist food. And we're back. I'm really excited about this. The meal it looks so beautiful.
It's so delicious and colorful.
And I can taste this
Yes, you can taste this one.
Salmon beans. Istambu.
Istambu.
That's what they call it in Zulu.
No, bunches. Yes, umusho.
In Xhosa.
Yes.
Umusho. We've got that click game. So, should I?
Dig in.
I'm not sure I'm ready.
Tastes like meat, eh?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh my god. I think it's time to end the show.
Okay.
This food is definitely anti-racist. We'll see you guys later. And that's it for us at the Anti-Racist Hot Dog. Chef Pali. She's always great. This food is great. I'm going to take this with me.
Okay, no problem.
Appreciate it. I'll see you later.
Bye.